All right, item 6. We're hearing a lot of concern from the public about speeding and other traffic issues, and there's been compounded by statewide pedestrian death numbers, and wrong-way drivers. On behalf of the council, we're going to welcome Chief Fox to tonight's meeting to give us an overview of the traffic issues and department initiatives. Chief Fox, welcome.
Thank you very much. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Alaric Fox, and as always, it continues very much to be my pleasure to serve as Enfield's Chief of Police. Having watched the last few council meetings, as the mayor indicated, there certainly has been some consternation, some questions about levels of motor vehicle enforcement activity and perhaps in a broader sense, driver behavior within the community. As luck would have it, that was tying in to the end of the year, which is when, amongst other times, I pull the department's data to take a look at where we are in comparison to previous years in a number of specific categories. I had the occasion to present this information before the Public Safety Subcommittee. Several of you were present. I believe it was reasonably well received. I'm happy to present it this evening as well in the larger picture for all of you. In 2022, and this is slightly dipped from last year, but not by much, the Enfield Police Department took 38,404 calls for service. That is 105.2 daily. That is an incredible number of calls for service. The men and women of the department are thrilled to serve the department, but please have no doubt 105 calls for service is a significant commitment of your resources and certainly the resources that I shepherd as the Chief of Police. Within that figure is 1,705 arrests. We continue to do everything in our power whenever possible to de-escalate, to try to avoid an arrest, to route individuals to social services, other mechanisms for care whenever it is appropriate. But drunk driving offenses and domestic violence offenses and felony offenses and robbery offenses, these are not situations that lend themselves in any way, shape, or form to a de-escalation situation. 1,705 is 4.67 arrests daily. Against this backdrop of the 105 calls for service per day, I thought it important to emphasize for you that some of these calls for service are quick. Some of them you're going to measure with a stopwatch. An assist to a citizen, somebody who's locked out, perhaps somebody that comes in for fingerprints, somebody that needs a quick assist pointed in the right direction, could literally be a 5-minute interaction. But weighing against that, and perhaps it goes without saying, but I wanted to give you some of the high points here. In calendar year 2022, this town saw a little bit more than one burglary per week. And that's a commitment so it's only a burglary, not when you're the homeowner that suffered that burglary. That's a commitment of a significant amount of department resources at least once a week. CREST activations, 16 activations times 6 department members that deploy out in the middle of the day or the middle of the night, sometimes for hours on end, for very dangerous, very scary situations where, as skilled as I'd like to think I am, as skilled as I like to think Captain Kazalauskas is, they're way beyond our skill set. 16 CREST team activations. Domestic violence incidents, 240 in a calendar year. 52 weeks in a year is a significant cause for concern. 98 DUI arrests, 2 per week. Fraud cases, 214 in the course of a calendar year. Larcenies, 721. Murder was only 1, but we do tend to average about 1 per year, and that is the commitment of resources that we're measuring in weeks, not in hours. That's the bulk of the detective division all night long, right outside the door, all day long, all day long, all day long, all day long for days and weeks and months that followed. Accidents, fatal, injury, property evading, 154, 510, 139. 391 protective custody incidents. Those are situations where an individual presents a danger to themselves or someone else, and they need voluntarily, involuntarily, to go to the hospital for care. Sexual assaults, 1 per week. 42. Narcan saves, and I've joked with you about this before. I can be both very excited. We had 43 Narcan saves. I can be very scared. we had 43 Narcan saves, and I feel that delivering it with both effect is appropriate. Opioid overdose deaths, 7, narcotics investigations, 117. Against that backdrop, 6,337 motor vehicle stops in the course of the calendar year, 17.36 motor vehicle stops per day. I do not in any way begrudge the very legitimate feeling of residents in town that say they drive too fast on my road, because I believe that they do drive too fast on that road, and unfortunately on that road, and unfortunately on your road and my road, and seemingly on every road. But I do not want to leave the impression, not that anyone has intimated this, but I don't want to leave the impression that the officers are not engaging in motor vehicle enforcement or it's not seen as a priority. 6,337 motor vehicle stops, 17.36 per day. And you've seen this list before, but I am trying to offer to you by showing to you in the very small font and in the multiple slides the fact that we are at last count up to 63 requested locations for motor vehicle enforcement. The phrase that I used it earlier speaking to a fellow attendee here tonight, and I'm not proud of this, but it's the nature of what we do. This is to some degree the whack-a-mole game, and every place that an officer is some place that an officer is not. And I mean, that's a concept that we proudly call police omnipresence, but we do have to appreciate and understand that if they are on Elm Street, they're not on Booth, and if they are on Mullen, they're not in front of 57 Simon. You were specifically asked about, and I had the pleasure of speaking to the gentleman a few moments ago, came over and introduced himself. It was great to meet him, about the Abbey Road concerns, past and present. I would share with you with a quiet degree of pride that we had 47 motor vehicle stops on Abbey Road in 2022. A specific complaint was received as to Abbey Road in August of 2022, and 30 of those 47 traffic stops were conducted after that complaint was received. So there was a level of department responsiveness even last year to this. Thereafter, the assets do move to focus on other locations. Additionally, we did put the speed trailer out on Abbey Road from July 18th to August 1st. And then as a result of additional instructions that I gave to my folks, because Abbey Road is obviously a source of concern, we have had another 20 traffic stops between January 12th and January 20th. It is my intention to shift one officer from the patrol division into the traffic division in March of this year. This is this game. I would be more than happy, and frankly do think this is the province of the council, if it was your direction, to take your input as to where resources were directed. But I also operate, and I take this quite seriously, operate in an effort to be responsive to my budget and the overtime impact that it has when I move an officer from patrol into the traffic division. The traffic division has one supervisor assigned to it and 3 officers. Their primary responsibility throughout the course of the day is to take the crashes, the property crashes, the injury crashes, the fatal crashes. When they are not engaged in that activity, they are my traffic enforcement experts. As we are approaching full staffing, we were there briefly, as we approach and hopefully return to full staffing, I can have a little more flexibility in terms of my personnel allotment. It's my intention to move one additional officer from patrol to traffic in March of this year and leave that person there. I would be more than happy to do more than that, but I also recognize that I have a fiscal responsibility to the community and to all of you to ensure that my numbers in the overtime ledger don't go up unreasonably. This will allow a little bit more flexibility in that area. Finally, tonight, I was asked, slightly divorced from the discussion about motor vehicle enforcement, to spend at least a few minutes offering you the insights, whatever insights that I can, as to wrong-way driving concerns. This has obviously been a significant public concern. We've seen a great deal of attention. We've seen fatalities. We've seen heartbreak, certainly in this area. We know that wrong-way drivers typically almost always fall into one of 3 categories. They're lost, they're elderly, or they are intoxicated. There are a couple of intersections, we do not have them in town, I'm pleased to report, where individuals can go to turn into what they think is the entrance to a highway, and the exit is literally right next to there. There are places where one would think they're going onto a side street, and all of a sudden they find out that they've erroneously turned into the wrong direction on a highway. We do not have such locations in Enfield. In the broader picture, lost, elderly, or intoxicated. What we do have in Enfield is a notable piece of I-91 that is very far removed from Hartford, and the state police out of Hartford take responsibility for our highways. We routinely assist the state police with crashes on the highway, and we would, in time of crisis, such as a wrong-way driver, very likely be the first, very close to the first resource to get up on the highway to try to help with that wrong-way driver. There are no easy answers here. Having spent 24 years wearing that uniform, I can tell you what we don't do. We certainly don't get on the highway and travel in the wrong direction in an effort to catch up to the wrong-way driver. That would seriously only compound the problem. So what we do is we try to get in the proper travel lane and try to get that person's attention with lights, blaring the siren, whatever we can to try to redirect that person, and sometimes it works. There have been instances where a trooper simply through happenstance has been going the right way as they've been coming toward the wrong-way driver. And with his permission, I share with you, because I otherwise wouldn't speak out of school, that is the reason that Mr. Steve Hall, who works for me, left the state police on a disability pension. Because this situation is frankly a game of chicken. And with the lights activated and the wigwags flashing and a siren on, sometimes that's enough to deter that individual, be they lost, elderly, or intoxicated, and they reroute. And sometimes they do not. There are no good answers here. We are, in fact, seeing an increase. There are some larger technical DOT solutions. None of them are a panacea. They are all perhaps just thoughts that are out there for the world's consideration. Variable message boards are in place in very populated cities, populated locations, but you have to see the message board in time, and then you have to have time to get to the side of the road or an exit to get off the highway for the variable message board to have value. Improved signage, markings, flashing lights, and rumble strips. You may have heard about this. Basically on a radar or a laser beam, if somebody started driving the wrong way on an exit ramp, the beam would somehow detect that and the lights would start flashing to try to catch that person's attention. There are in some jurisdictions, but I don't know that it would work up north, wrong way spike strips. Think about the rental car lot. Do not back up or your tires will be shredded. The problem with those in this climate is they're not going to work with plows. And even if they were going to work, invariably we would have someone making a claim for damage to tires. Highway sensing, highway sensors leading to a real-time monitoring system has also been part of the discussion. No easy answers, but it certainly is my pleasure to give you whatever guidance I can in terms of that as an issue and the potential big picture solutions that are out there. As always, I'm more than happy to address any concerns, questions, or comments as to either the motor vehicle enforcement discussion or the wrong-way driving, if I can be of any assistance.
Councilor Finger.
Did you want to go, Cindy? Thank you, Chief.
Sir.
Excellent presentation.
Thank you, sir.
I, for one, would never question the way that your officers do their jobs. I think that, as rated, we do have the #1 police department in the state, and I appreciate everything that you and your officers do.
Thank you.
You guys are fantastic. I do know that a few weeks ago at the transfer station, we lost power because a tree fell over the power lines. You had an officer sit there for 6.5 hours because he couldn't leave because of the liability to the town of Enfield, then was replaced for another 2.5 hours as we left that day. So I do know that your hands are tied on a lot of things. That officer could have been doing maybe the Abbey Road check or somewhere else, but now they get pulled off to go somewhere else. People don't realize that they're just not sitting inside Elm Street waiting for a call. These officers are out there doing their jobs, and I just want to say thank you very much for what you do.
I thank you. I appreciate that. The patrol officers generally are going call to call to call, and when they're not on one, they're often assisting a coworker because the domestic or the drunk driver or the robber are not one-person calls. Thank you.
Councilor Mangini.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief.
Yes, ma'am.
Again, wonderful presentation. The data is right on, and we appreciate that. What concerns me, though, is that you're going to take an officer from patrol, put him on traffic. We have budget coming up, and again, we don't have a window into what is coming forward, but hopefully you're going to be putting a request in your budget to satisfy your needs, because I know I speak on behalf of the council and the public. We want to make sure our PD is fully not only staffed, but able, to handle whatever situations. We don't want to tie your hands behind your back.
I very much appreciate that as well. I certainly would be, I'd be very happy to have the discussion with an understanding that with a sincere understanding that I recognize that all of you have got to balance the books come budget time as well. And the more resources that are available, the more I can deploy into hotspots and areas of concern. But I certainly appreciate that and would welcome that discussion if that was a council direction, a council priority. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Hopkins.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Chief, I always meant to ask about CREST activations. So how does that work? I'm sure it's a point of pride to be able to assist with something in another community. Does the state reimburse us for that? What does that look like in terms of?
So they do not reimburse us. CREST is the Capital Region Emergency Services team. And if you can envision, effectively, it's the greater Hartford County area, certainly as far north as us, as far south as Middletown, Cromwell, that area. Departments that aren't large enough to have the commitment, nor am I asking for this, the commitment of personnel, resources, and equipment to field their own tactical teams, regionalize this as a commitment. And there are times where we lose town resources when they go to Coventry to assist Coventry with an armed barricaded subject. But I get the Coventry officers and the Wethersfield officers and the East Hartford and the Manchester officers to come to town when we have the high-risk search warrant, when we have the barricaded subject, when we have the shots fired calls for service. So no, it is effectively the ultimate in a mutual aid, if you will, as part of a standing protocol. There is a great deal of pride and a great deal of expertise in the CREST team members that I also think they're able to impart, at least on a micro level, to other members of the organization.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Councilor Ludwig.
Chief, how you doing?
Thank you, sir. I'm very well. Thank you.
Two questions. So I think the nature of traffic, is kind of whack-a-mole, right? So do we do sort of like, again, you get complaints in a certain part of town. Do we do certain, okay, you know what, we're going to take some folks, not that you need to do overtime, but hey, knock on wood, maybe there's not a lot of other things going on. So you do a special trap or whatever it may be, or you just put a car there. Do we do that regularly without needing overtime? I would assume we do.
We do. It's that this is not an overtime assignment.
Right.
If I happen to have something that would fit, a click it or ticket grant, a DUI grant,
right,
I could meld a couple of worlds together. But most of the complaints that we hear, passing school buses, stop sign violations, speeding violations, those are being done on straight time with either traffic personnel or patrol personnel.
And the reason why I ask, so I'm going to do a little psychological experiment here. When you put that whatever it is, the electronic thing, that says you're going 45 miles an hour and everyone slows down, right? Everyone says that's one of the most effective traffic, calmer. So my question is, if you guys were doing North Main Street tonight and your people are flying by and do you then follow up saying, look, on our website, look, by the way, folks, we want to let you know we are out there. And we go all over town. There's no set schedule, and we gave 25 tickets tonight because folks didn't want to stop and went flying. If that follow up, because I'm telling you, that's as effective as having an officer at every single corner in town. Once hey, look, they are out there, and maybe they're not on my street tonight.
Sure,
but they certainly could be because
sure,
it's part. Is that part of that? Because I don't know if we do that.
So it's a yes and no. On the first part, yes. On the second part, you raise a good point. When we take a complaint, especially if it's more than a one-off, especially if it's more than a, hey, when you get a chance, The traffic sergeant is assigned to actually study that road, and that involves putting the speed trailer up, which captures the speeds. He then is able to calculate out what we figure the 85th percentile speed is to figure out, really, is it a perception issue? Is it in fact an area? What's the average speed in that area? So that part always takes place. Certainly a renewed emphasis or a push for, on this day, this many traffic stops occurred. That's a sound suggestion.
I'm telling you, when we do, I'm just telling you from my own experience. When we have someone near a stop sign that is historically no one sort of stops, I can tell you I get calls on it.
Yep.
Hey, the officer's over there, then they're giving tickets on whatever it may be. I'm telling you, it's effective. And it doesn't cost us a dime to do it. So I'm just saying something to think about, just
Fair.
a suggestion.
Yep, fair.
And again, this is something, I don't know why those traffic strips, I'm sorry, they're a waste, in my opinion. But if we did a dip, or we did what Windsor does in the nice, big, whatever they call it, I don't know what you want to call it, speed bump. They work in, you go to Windsor, you go flying over that speed bump, you're stopped. If we could do that in between Monroe and Coolidge on Abbey Road, where that is the most dangerous section in town. I stood there with a mother, and I saw that car come flying. I got to tell you, I got white because I was scared to death. If we invest in some of the money and put it there as a pilot program, if it doesn't work, we pull it out. Because I know there's other sections, we've talked about this for 40 years. I mean, back when I was on the council in the 90s. People, you can't do it because it hurts emergency vehicles, blah, blah, blah. But other towns have done it. And they seem pretty, and I'm not talking about a rotary. You don't need to spend all that kind of money on a rotary. But if we put the dips and you're flying down Abbey Road and you hit a dip, because if you've ever been on the highway and there's a little bit of snow and you decide, you know what, I don't want to go slow on 91, I'm going to go over to the HOV lane, and you hit that dip, guess what happens to your car? You ain't going anywhere.
I'm not adverse to that. I mean, I was asked to present and did present, a more formal traffic calming position paper, and we presented that. But certainly these other options are at your level.
I don't know if it goes through you, it's through our budget, but it's something we should consider as a pilot. If it doesn't work, so be it. But for me, the excuse that it's, I'm sorry, I think it's an excuse, and you can disagree. I'm not saying this to you, but I've heard, the fire trucks can't go over it, the plows can't go over it. Well, again, they know going in that section we have speed bumps or a dip. They're going to go slow, and I'm sure the people who live there, hey, if those folks are going slow, everyone's going slow.
I hear what you're saying, and I defer to the council on that
again,
one.
Great presentation. I appreciate your answer, because I think, again, if we let people know, hey, we don't have to even be specific. We were in the Brainerd Road area, and oh, by the way, we just want to let people know we issued 26 speeding tickets, so we're listening to what you're telling us. Mm-hmm. I think it would be very effective.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Councilor Nelson.
Thank you, Chief. Great presentation.
Thank you, sir.
One thing that I think you should have touched on is you have 100 sworn officers.
Correct.
Are you still currently at full roster?
No.
No. We've already had one retire out.
We had, one's retirement will take effect on 1/31. There was one unexpected separation from service. And I don't want to go too far off script, but there are at least a couple of others that are exploring options. And to some degree, that's the nature of what we do. But the short answer to your question is no, we are not at 100 any longer.
Right. So, and that's not counting vacations, familiarity leave, officers that are set up to retire, the drop plan in the future. So to say we're at 100 full-time officers, even having 100 full on the roster, at any given time, you could be down to 90 or 85 sworn officers because they're out long-term disability and other things. We all want traffic calming, and we want to take care of the residents throughout town. And I think he's saying loud and clear, it's up to us. And I know we used to have 2 officers in the pipeline that we would hire. We would send them to the academy. So when an officer retired or somebody was out for long-term disability, we had officers to put on the street to take that spot. He can't fill these positions with people that aren't there. So I don't know what happened to those 2 positions, but they don't exist anymore. It was just so he can hire them today. It takes a year to get them on the street, and he made I don't even know if it was a week, with 100 full-time officers, and we're already gone from it. So in a year from now, the changes are astronomical. You look at further in the agenda, his fit up all the new officers this year alone is crazy. So I'm willing to put my money where my mouth is, or the taxpayers' money, and add those 2 positions back, because, long-term disability or familiarity leave, those officers, I don't believe, are getting paid to be out that long from your payroll.
Well, it depends on what they're on. I mean, a workers' comp situation, the insurance carrier becomes involved. Military leave, there's a formula. Family leave, if somebody who's pregnant, somebody who's injured, there would be variables in each one of those situations.
Right. But the point is, we could be using some of the salary from those positions to cover the cost of these 2 other positions. And then, they become full-time officers, and somebody retires out, and he's still at 100, even though his count is 102. So I think we really should consider that at budget time. It used to be here. It was a great plan for him to help foresee officers that are retiring and help them get up to speed quicker. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Ungary.
Hi, Chief. Nice to see you.
Thank you, ma'am. Nice to see you.
Thanks for coming in and continuing this conversation from our public safety meeting. During I think it was a couple meetings ago, we received a handout with all the traffic calming scenarios that we could possibly use. Do we still have that available? Perhaps we could email it to everyone on the council.
I'd certainly be more than happy to provide it again.
I think it would be good for everyone to see it and read the suggestions.
My pleasure.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Despard.
Mr. Mayor. Chief, thanks. Great presentation.
Thank you, sir.
This is, as Councilwoman Ungary said, we went over this in public safety. I was relieved to see you'd be here. I didn't want to have to recap that all. And then I also did want to say, I share your 2 feelings on the Narcan saves. I mean, how incredible that you guys have saved 42 lives, and yet how terrible that you've had to. And so I know that as a council, this is something we want to be talking about more. And I think we have some things in the works to sort of highlight that crisis. And I know that, you'll be right along there with us. So thanks again.
Thank you. And when I speak on it, I actually deliver it just that way, because I think the point is made when you describe it with both affects.
Okay, thank you, Chief. I just have a couple of quick comments. Thank you for all of your statistics that you gave to everybody in regard to the traffic issues that we do have here in town.
Yes,
and
sir.
I think it's an eye-opening experience for the data that you showed, 63 areas in town that we're actually patrolling and taking care of. Fiscally, and looking at some suggestions that we've had, in regards to, possible speed bumps in certain areas of town. I think we also have to start looking at, and I know it's a cost, but a lot of towns are doing it, especially in high volume areas with these roundabouts and rotaries. And you want to talk about slowing down traffic? There's an example there. I just want to touch base a little on wrong way drivers. I know that the Connecticut State Department of Transportation has a program out there now that they're examining different areas of town on and off ramps that you were suggesting. And I know that and I think Enfield, there's 4 areas off, I think 46 and 48. I don't know if you've been in contact or they've been in contact with your department yet, but there are specific areas there on those particular exits, and also on 190, obviously Hazard Ave, and 220. There's a couple of different sections there that people go the wrong way. And I think that their program is putting on pavement to say wrong way. So if somebody turns when it's dark out and they see their headlights and they see this, that something's going to be in the road. Mm-hmm. So as long as the state of Connecticut has been hopefully been in contact, but I know they will be, because that there is a program that is out there.
Very good.
In regard to that.
Very good. 48 is one of the areas. If I was getting to pick the 48 exchange area, it's just it's tight, and there's a lot going on there.
Right.
And I think that would be certainly at the top of my list as well.
Correct.
Thank you.
But thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
This is definitely worthwhile for everybody to hear all the statistics, because we do have people that come up here and sometimes give their own statistics. And so thank you for telling us.
I certainly understand their concerns.
Appreciate that.
It's a perception reality. I'm happy to help.
Correct. Thank you very much. Okay, Councilor Ludwig.
The wrong way. I'm curious. We don't get any state cops help up here, right, for the highway? If it's all on the Enfield police, is that correct?
The highway is a state police jurisdiction, so it is all theirs. Having said that,
I never see I never see a state cop up here.
so the state police patrol structure out of Troop H, and frankly out of any other troops that are centered around a big city, is that it seems like the resources fold in on the most densely populated area, in this case Hartford, with regularity. So when the individuals that are assigned, when the trooper who's assigned the tunnel on 84 takes a crash, that individual, he or she, is tied up. So when one comes in at the 91 interchange, the nearest patrol comes and covers that. And what you see, what I lived, was the resources tend to do this around the greater Hartford area. So you might have the Manchester patrol,
right,
but all of a sudden you're in East Hartford because the East Hartford guy's in Hartford. What this causes, this cascade, if you will, is that we, from a mutual aid perspective, with a quiet sense of pride, are up on the highway with some regularity to provide assistance. Once the state gets there for the crash, for the serious injury accident, for the fatal, for anything else, it does belong to them.
But we're most likely the initial responder.
We are very, very often the
I think
first
that's what
person
most
up
people
there.
don't understand, and that's a key point. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Greatly appreciate it.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.